Welcome to College Football Playoff Selection Show.
Welcome to the CFCL College Football Playoff Selection Show. I'm your host, Mango, and it's time to know who's in, who's out, and everything else regarding the postseason. Before we dive into all that, though, let's take a look at some of the more notable conference championship games from this past weekend. Starting in the MAC, Western Michigan has won the conference in back-to-back seasons after dominating Kent State 51-21. This is big because with this win, the Broncos have already practically punched their ticket into the playoff as the G5 auto bid. In the Big 12, TCU knocked off Kansas with a crazy finish 31-24 on a Hail Mary as time expired. The Jayhawks fall to 11-2 and could potentially end up on the outside looking in. The Horned Frogs are trying to fight for an auto bid, but unfortunately for them, some of the big dogs won. How bad does this hurt their chances? USC took down Sparty 34-21 in overtime to win the Big Ten in their first season there. Michigan State drops to 10-3, and USC has guaranteed themselves a slot. Can the Spartans still find a way in? Washington was dealt a blow by the other Spartans of San Jose State out in the Pac-12. The overtime loss 41-34 caused San Jose State to knock off a favored Washington. San Jose State is probably too far to make the playoff, unfortunately, but the new members win the conference in year one and knock down Washington at least a peg or two. The ACC featured an upset as well, as Pitt took down Florida State 17-13 in a complete slugfest, extending their win streak to 8 games. Odds are that Florida State is still locked in. We'll have to see how the committee has punished them. Lastly, Georgia remained the only unbeaten team by taking care of Texas A&M 45-33. They proved to be the best team in the country by being the only one to go undefeated and capped off the season with a win over a decent team for the conference title. And that wraps up the big moments in the conference championships. Let's move on to the awards. We'll start by quickly listing all of our positional awards. Stuart Rosado, the quarterback out of Mississippi State, wins the Maxwell. Louisville running back Jacob Alistair wins the Walter Camp. The Bednarik goes to Stephon Hale, North Carolina's defensive tackle. The Nagurski is won by Adam Lumpkin, the freshman defensive lineman out of Tennessee. Stuart Rosado returns and also wins the O'Brien. Tristan Allen out of Western Michigan wins the Walker. Wide receiver Ronnie Baker from Cal wins the Blitnikoff. App State's Whitman Landrum wins the Mackey. Louisiana's left tackle Timothy McLaughlin wins the Outland. Clarence Hawkins from Texas wins the Remington. Stephon Hale returns to claim the Lombardi. Spencer Smith out of Texas A&M wins the Butkus. Victor Wilkerson, also from A&M, wins the Thorpe. The Groza goes to Michigan State's Andrew Bryan. The Guy Award goes to Chad Coleman from Washington. And lastly, the Jet goes to Blair Glenn from Syracuse. Moving to the Heisman Trophy. Your honorable mentions are Bjorn Mills, the sophomore Syracuse quarterback, finished in 5th place and played a huge role in their big season. And another quarterback, Tennessee's sophomore quarterback, Ron Delgado, had a big game passing and rushing, and definitely was the impact player that they'll be glad to get back next season. And now the top 3, in alphabetical order, are junior quarterback Axel Moon out of USC. Their 12-1 season was definitely put together through the air, and none of that could have been achieved without him at the helm. Jordan Alistair, Louisville's senior running back, who led to their massive season on the ground and an overall record of 10-2. And finally, Tristan Allen, the sophomore running back out of Western Michigan. Western Michigan finished as the highest winning group of 5 team in the country behind his efforts. The Season 2 Heisman winner is Tristan Allen. The sophomore put up 1,889 yards over 292 carries, averaging 6.5 yards per carry. With just shy of 150 yards per game, Allen put up 24 rushing touchdowns with just a single fumble. Allen adds 9 more touchdowns through the air for a total of 33. He caught 44 passes for 558 yards, bringing the total yardage over 2,400 this season. And now for the CFCL awards. Starting with CFCL Coach of the Year. The top 3 are Coach Pandas Tab out of Florida State. He took a 7-6 Seminole team to an 11-2 playoff and ACC contender, a resounding jump forward with just one offseason to put in the work. Many attribute his success to his work in recruiting and the transfer portal, surrounding himself with a top-tier roster. Air Force head coach McGritty. The previously 2-10 Falcons finished 9-4 this season, adding 7 wins to the team without their potential bowl win. There are rumors going around that McGritty may be receiving offers from other schools and might have his eyes elsewhere currently. And lastly, Kansas head coach Saber, who took the 7-6 Jayhawks to an 11-2 season following the loss in the conference championship. They could find themselves competing for the national championship if they can sneak into the playoff under her guidance. And the Season 2 CFCL Coach of the Year is Pandas Tab. The huge jump forward for this team was just too grand to overlook, and the Seminoles have a bright future ahead if this trajectory can continue. The CFCL Freshman of the Year award is presented to the most outstanding freshman CFCL player. The top 3 candidates for this are Rafe Krieger out of Michigan State, who has been a great utility to rely on when they aren't passing. Florida State's running back Tyson Casson, who has been a staple of the entire offense all season. And Tennessee's defensive end Adam Lumpkin, who has had a great season on the defensive line, playing a big role in the threat that is the Tennessee defense. And the Freshman of the Year award goes to Tyson Casson of Florida State, as they have begun to sweep these awards. Casson had 279 carries for 1,679 yards, averaging 6 yards a carry. He picked up 18 touchdowns on the ground with just a single fumble. Casson has 406 more yards in the air with 3 touchdowns on top of it. And now for the CFCL Defensive Player of the Year. This award is given to the most outstanding defensive CFCL player. Here are the top 3. Tennessee left end Adam Lumpkin gets another mention here. Florida State's defensive end Ted Carrington is looking to continue their award sweep. And North Carolina defensive tackle Stephon Hale rounding out the last of the 3. The winner of the CFCL Defensive Player of the Year is Adam Lumpkin from Tennessee. The freshman wrapped up 89 tackles, 60 of them solo, with 36 tackles for loss and 13.5 sacks on the season. Lumpkin also batted down the ball 3 times with a single safety on the year. And now for our final award before we dive into the CFP selection. The biggest and most grand of all, the CFCL Player of the Year. The top 3 candidates are USC quarterback Axel Moon. He's just had a huge impact on turning USC from ineligible to bowl to a national title contender. Mississippi State's man under center, Stuart Rosado. He leads the nation in yards, completions, and touchdowns. And our final entry, another quarterback, a familiar name now, Tennessee's own Ron Delgado. He's fun, he's flashy, but is he good enough for Player of the Year? Taking the Season 2 CFCL Player of the Year with 4,918 yards passing on 340 completions for 72%, 50 passing touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions. It's the league leader, Stuart Rosado. Rosado's talents put up insane numbers and is likely just the most Sunday-ready quarterback in the league right now. And now, it's time to move into what everyone is waiting for. It's time to find out who has made the college football playoff.
It all comes down to this. In a season wrought with chaos, where giants have risen and fallen, 8 teams have fought their way to the top. Months of preparation, grueling workouts, and intense practices have brought them to this moment. The fate of their entire season hangs in the balance as the college football world holds its breath. The stakes have never been higher, and the pressure is on.
Going deep near the end zone, it's caught, and a touchdown!
But in the midst of the chaos, only the elite will emerge victorious. Who will rise to the occasion and cement their place in history? Who will crumble under the weight of the moment? The college football playoff. Who's in?
Eight spots are waiting to be claimed by only the very best. Without further ado, let's dive in. Starting at the very bottom, number 25 is claimed by Arkansas State. The 10-2 Red Wolves had a great season, but not making the conference championship game hindered their performance. Number 24 goes to Nevada. They dominated the Mountain West championship game, and if Western Michigan had lost, they would likely be the Group of 5 representative. And the Oregon Ducks come in at number 23. They started off hot this season, but losses in the later weeks really knocked them out here. Number 22 brings up the Iowa Hawkeyes. They had a shot at playing in the conference championship, but that Nebraska loss really did its damage. Looking to 21, Oregon State comes in. The Beavers have had a successful season back-to-back now, but neither performance has been good enough to slot them all the way at the top and into the playoff. At 20 is LSU. The 9-3 Tigers had a lot of up and downs before going on a late streak to contend for the West, but ultimately fell short. Entering the teens, we have a somewhat disappointing Miami Hurricane team. They were top 10 for much of the season, and when all the cards were on the table, they got dominated by Pitt, which unfortunately ended most of their hopes. Number 18 stays in the ACC with Syracuse. They had a solid season behind the arm of Bjorn Mills, and this season could be a solid move in the upward direction for them. At number 17, it's another surprising team. It's Penn State. They put their name on the map by taking down Nebraska, but their disappointing performances in some of the later season games cost them in their division and ultimately in the playoff race. Number 16. It features none other than the Pac-12 champs, San Jose State. They had a huge win over Washington to take the conference, but it was just too little for them to make the CFP in back-to-back seasons, once as a Group of 5 team and then once as a Power 5 team. Coming into the top 15, it's Nebraska. The once top-ranked Huskers certainly had a fall from glory, as they always seem to reach ranked number 1 at some point in the season and then just fall short here in the end. Number 14 is another Big Ten team. It's the Michigan Wolverines. Their 9-3 season is a copy of their record last season, but they've certainly got a more impressive resume this season despite featuring that loss to Utah. Without that, who knows where they could be right now. At number 13, it's another 9-3 team with Texas. They could be back, folks. They capped off their season with a major win over Texas A&M and could be looking bigger for the future. Speaking of, the number 12 spot goes to the Texas A&M Aggies. The preseason favorites didn't quite live up to expectations, and their opportunity likely collapsed with that loss in the SEC title game, knocking them to where they are now. At number 11, it's Michigan State. Sparty had a rough start to the season, but they turned it all around and was looking to win their conference. Unfortunately, overtime against USC brought those hopes to an end, and now the race is getting really tight. So, let's change pace. Instead of revealing who's out, let's see who has locked their spot. Starting at the very top, it's no shock. It's the undefeated Georgia Bulldogs. Their season wasn't nice and pretty, but they always get the job done and have claimed number 1 going in. Moving on to number 2, we have USC. No real surprise here either. They jumped Washington after their loss to San Jose State, it seems, and they should still not be underestimated. Number 3 shows us Washington, speak of. So they did fall, but not far whatsoever. Just a spot after losing in overtime, and they're looking to recover. Rounding out the top half of the playoff bids, it's Florida State. So the Seminoles do manage to stay highly ranked, and the highest 2-loss team there is. As we move forward with these teams, we're going to start knowing the matchups for the college football playoff. At number 5, it's Pitt. So the rematch is set in the first round then. Florida State will duke it out with Pitt and look for revenge, while Pitt is going to look to knock them off back-to-back. Taking on Washington at number 6. It's the auto bid, Western Michigan. They came in ranked higher than most people projected. We'll have to see what they can do behind Heisman winner Tristan Allen. Our number 7 slot goes to the Tennessee Volunteers. So they slide in at 10-2 and are ready to face off against USC. This could be one of the most fun CFP games because when both teams click, there isn't a team that can stop those offenses. But Tennessee is going to have to play perfect football because USC likely to open as a big favorite. Just one slot remains. 3 teams. You could probably deduce who they are. Let's take a look. Kansas, Louisville, and TCU. Those are the teams, all vying for the same spot. The one spot left that will let them compete for a national championship. Let's take a look at the resumes. Kansas has the best record of the 3, sitting at a comfortable 11-2. However, their strength of schedule just isn't great and features no ranked teams at all. They have 4 wins over quality opponents, but also a loss to a bad Mizzou team. And does that Hail Mary loss to TCU in the Big 12 championship game cost them? Louisville doesn't have that extra win on the slate, but they've played a tough slew of games. Their losses came at the hands of Miami and Florida State, which are both top 25 teams. The Cardinals have a much tougher schedule than Kansas, but they weren't able to make the conference championship game. Is that one game a big difference here? And lastly, we have the Horned Frogs of TCU. Their 10-3 record comes to them after winning the Big 12. However, their division was one of the worst in the Power 5, and it cost them in their schedule strength. When they did play a top team in Texas, they got blanked, 27-0. But the biggest weight over their head? A 19-point loss to an FCS opponent way back in the opener. So which of these teams is in? Number 10, knocked out of playoff consideration. We have the TCU Horned Frogs. Their losses were just all bad, either by margin of defeat, the opponent, or a mix of both. Unfortunately, this has led to their elimination, but a good season nonetheless. So the final CFP bid is now between Kansas and Louisville for their shot at winning it all on a path of upsets, taking on the number 1 Georgia Bulldogs. At number 8, it is the Louisville Cardinals. Congratulations to them for making it in, and we'll have to see if they can pull off these upsets. As for Kansas, unfortunately their lack of competition has doomed them. They will certainly be making a New Year's Six Bowl, but a national title is not in the running this season. But speaking of bowls, we can now dive into the Season 2 bowl games. Alabama and UAB will be meeting in the New Mexico Bowl, with the Crimson Tide getting a bid at 5-7. The famous Idaho Potato Bowl features Ball State and Boise State. The Gasparilla Bowl pits Western Kentucky against UTSA. The Hawaii Bowl gives us Georgia Southern and Colorado State. The New Orleans Bowl will be San Diego State taking on Louisiana. The Barstool Arizona Bowl gives us a good game in Arkansas State and Air Force. The Las Vegas Bowl is Oregon taking on Nebraska in a big matchup. Wisconsin will be taking on the Chippewas in the Quick Lane Bowl. The Military Bowl features East Carolina and Maryland. Duke's Mayo Bowl has UCLA taking on UCF. NC State preps for Colorado in the Holiday Bowl. Syracuse makes the Cheez-It Bowl where they'll be playing BYU. The Independence Bowl is Marshall and Army. The Texas Bowl has Kansas State taking on South Carolina. Stanford takes on Oklahoma State in the Armed Forces Bowl. The LA Bowl is Nevada and USF in a matchup of G5 champs. The Alamo Bowl is Cincinnati taking on Oregon State. Iowa State and Washington State play in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. Wake Forest and Utah will battle it out in the Sun Bowl. The Music City Bowl is South Alabama and Iowa. The Liberty Bowl features Baylor and Purdue. The First Responder Bowl gives us UTEP and Virginia Tech. The Mississippi State Bulldogs face off against the Buckeyes in the ReliaQuest Bowl. The Citrus Bowl features Penn State and LSU. LSU back-to-back appearances in this bowl game. The Gator Bowl has Kentucky taking on North Carolina. Temple and FAU meet in the Birmingham Bowl. And the Lending Tree Bowl is Fresno State taking on Old Dominion. And now for the New Year's Six Bowls. The Fiesta Bowl has Texas taking on Michigan in what could be a great matchup. The defense of the Longhorns will be tested against that Michigan offense, and we'll just have to see which team comes out on top. In the Peach Bowl, the Miami Hurricanes take on the Kansas Jayhawks. Kansas is looking to prove what they couldn't in the Big 12 title game, and Miami trying to hit that double-digit win mark. The Rose Bowl gives us Michigan State and San Jose State in the Battle of the Spartans. Michigan State is likely going to enter as a heavy favorite, but San Jose State has already shown an ability to stun everyone. Can they do it again? Lastly, the Sugar Bowl is Texas A&M taking on TCU. Both teams are 10-3 and are historic rivals, so this matchup could be a good one to cap off either of these teams' seasons. The Orange Bowl and Cotton Bowl are the New Year's Six semifinal games this season, so those results are pending. And of course, right after that, the National Championship. And now it's the moment that everyone has truly been waiting for. It's time to reveal the Toilet Bowl. There isn't as much drama surrounding this game this time around, as we had two teams finish 0-12. The Toilet Bowl will be Hawaii and Buffalo in the battle to prove that they aren't the worst of the worst in all of college football. Before we go, here is the finalized bracket for the college football playoff. Number 1 Georgia opens as a 9.5 point favorite over number 8 Louisville. Number 2 USC is a whopping 16.5 point favorite over the number 7 Volunteers, so they've got some work cut out. Number 3 Washington favored by just 4 over the 6 seed Western Michigan, so there could be some hope for the group of 5. Lastly, number 4 Florida State is a 6-point favorite over number 5 Pitt, despite just having lost to them. This game is full of revenge and bragging rights to determine who is king of the ACC. And that'll wrap up the show. We covered our awards, playoff, and bids, so congratulations to all the players, coaches, and teams recognized. There's an exciting few weeks coming up as we come to the close of CFCL Season 2.